Well, cheers, Grace Helbig. Cheers, Mamrie Hart.
You can't start our podcast like that for the second time in not a row, but
you act like people are watching these like sequentially or like Mad Men or something like that, like they're binging it. Which I just finished. Mad Men, highly recommended. I don't know if anyone's talking about it. It's a good show. Don't snarl at me.
I didn't snarl. You would have heard a snarl.
You
Snarl by
with your nose.
Snarl by definition entails a sound.
You
linguist.
You churled.
And what?
You churled. You had a very churlish expression on your face.
You just made up a word.
Churlish is a word.
No.
You know that? Yes, no. It is. I'll look it up.
No.
Churlish.
Anyway.
Here we go. It's not something you put on to toast. Churlish, rude in a mean-spirited and surly way. It seems churlish to complain. Adjective.
I still think you made it up.
No. Yeah, I put it in the Webster's dictionary, in Merriam-Webster's dictionary.
Well, I mean, Merriam defines racism differently now, so I don't trust that bitch.
Did he do that? Have
yeah.
they modified the definitions of words now?
Yep.
That's fucking weird.
Yep.
So, speaking of people using words poorly, let's talk about the debate, which I didn't see.
You're up to me for this. So
I really do my research ahead of time.
Clearly.
As in not watching the thing that we're talking about.
Clearly. You're getting doc paid for this. Doc to pay for
Are you saying Are you saying that my bills will be affected?
Yes.
Did you see what happened to Mainly
That's
Manny?
cultural. That's cultural.
I don't care. We can weave that into the debate. I'm voting for Mainly Manny in the Republican primary because, unlike many of those candidates, she is a boss and a CEO.
Are you finished?
No. Are the Lakeland, Florida police finished? No. They arrested a good TikToker and they arrested a good politician.
I want to know if the wig was on at the time.
You see a crooked wig falling down in between the cuffs going on.
Didn't you used to work for me? Anyway. No, I'm surprised, because you opened the can of worms, I'm surprised he wasn't arrested at the furniture store.
No. Mainly Manny.
Yes. I'm surprised he wasn't arrested at the furniture store when he was opening that really loud fake laptop, like I showed you that video. I mean,
and then pretending like it was the office.
Yes.
That he was working.
Oh my god! Like, that would have gotten you arrested.
This should be like, episode 75, the debate. Don't act shocked.
Okay, that's a good segue. So shockingly enough, not. The media is saying that Ron DeSantis won, quote, the debate.
What media?
Fox
I didn't even
News.
think his own wife
Fox
said he
News.
won the debate.
Fox News.
So the Fox News who hosted the debate.
Right. Kayleigh McEnany and some of those people on those shows, like in the morning shows, they were talking about how he was so wonderful and how he won. And I was talking to my father actually about this on my drive over here. He, I guess maybe because he watches Fox News still, because it's all he has.
Once you're over a certain age, you don't know how to change the channel.
And you don't know how to get your news online.
Exactly.
To be quite frank.
When Fox had an app, the boomers were, and our dear friend out there, Rich, will tell you, the boomers were like sidelined. They're like, what? What do you mean I can watch Fox shows when they're not on the TV?
And what do you mean there's extra stuff that I can watch?
What do you mean that Tucker has a daytime show? Like, I don't understand.
Who's Nancy Grace? Where did she come from?
It's true.
But no, even my dad was like, oh, well, I mean, I thought Ron DeSantis did a pretty good job. And I said, no.
What was the criteria for success of this? Because it seems like the person who won was the person who wasn't there, just by virtue of not being there.
As someone who watched it, I disagree with that, and I'll get to that.
Interesting. So do you want to go through the cast of characters there? Because there was...
No. Because because some of them don't deserve to be named on
Well,
this podcast.
there's like Trump said, there's Ada Hutchinson.
Yeah.
His name's Asa, but I call him Ada. I don't know what the fuck that's supposed to mean.
I don't know either.
I don't know if it's like an old, like, Miss Nancy and Aunt Fancy, like he's a faggot, like James Buchanan.
Tucker's sitting there going, "Why do you call him that?" And he's
Ada.
like, "Well, I mean, I shouldn't say on this show." And I'm like,
What did he do?
"No one knows what you're talking about."
The best here. That's the thing. The best Trump nicknames are completely inexplicable. Like they're just why. Why did you choose that? What does that mean? But anyway, Ada Hutchinson, who was the former governor of Arkansas, and the only Arkansas. Why is this one Kansas
exactly.
and this one Arkansas? America did not explain at that debate.
No.
So you have Ada Hutchinson, and all that people know about in the past couple of years is that Ada Hutchinson voted against a bill that would stop children from transitioning. That's all that you know,
Right.
basically. Okay.
But I have to add this as you're going through the list of characters.
Yes, I am.
It was really funny that Brett Baer and Martha McCallum, who were the hosts, explicitly said, and I don't know why they would ever do this, we put you in order on the stage of polling numbers. So they basically said the
What?
two people in the middle are the front runners that are at the debate, not excluding Trump. And then it moves out from there.
Wait, really? So you're furthest from the middle if no one knows who you are?
Asa Hutchinson and the North Dakota guy,
Doug Burgum.
they were on flanking sides.
They're basically in the audience
And
at
they
that
got
point.
like 2 questions, and I'm just like, no one knows who you are.
And then they have to do the old like John Kasich line of like, my father was a mailman introduction, and you're like, I don't give a fuck, like move it along. That's really sad.
The two most forgettable and unremarkable candidates, like
Were
they should
Ada
just
and
drop out now.
Doug Burgum.
Yeah.
So, by the way, I didn't know this. So Ada Hutchinson is just a random never Trump former governor. There's already Larry Hogan. There's already Chris Christie. There's already all these other people. But there's another one, and he thought he's going to run for president. And for some reason, people are supporting him. I don't know why. Doug Burgum, on the other hand, is a multi-millionaire. Like, cripplingly wealthy.
From what?
I guess he sold a software company at some point that does, like, data management.
At his age?
Like 30 years ago, and he's like the wealthiest man in North Dakota.
Well, that's not saying much.
But like, well, it's true. I know he owns 10 cows, but still, I don't know why.
He can make a dowry.
I don't know why he's running. I don't know why the mayor of Fargo or whatever is running for president, especially when you have to go through this is what I don't know about minor candidates. What I don't understand. I mean, why would you want to go through this process of the American people get to know who you are in the most embarrassing, demeaning, like obliterating every part of your past, present, and future into pieces just so you could maybe get a CNN spot down the road? Like, Ada and this guy were already governors of states. You're well respected. Why? I don't understand what you get from it. I don't think you make money off of it. I don't know what the end game is here. That's very weird to me.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So there's that.
They're inconsequential.
Okay, those are the outer flanking
Yes.
people. I also want to bring up the two people on the further flank who were supposed to be there and weren't. You have Larry Elder.
They didn't qualify?
They did. And then Fox at the last second said that they didn't. I don't know if you knew this.
No.
The day of, or the day before, Fox told Larry Elder, who is a gubernatorial candidate in California,
Right.
and who was a well-respected radio host for years and years, that, you're not qualifying because what the metrics were you had to have a certain number of donors, a certain number of small, I think a certain number of small donors, certain amount you've donated or something.
Right.
But then the last thing was that you have to get at least 1% in some polls. So Larry Elder furnished a Rasmussen poll. Rasmussen is a very well-respected Rasmussen reports. And said, look, I'm at 1% in this, I qualify. And they said, sorry, Rasmussen has been shown to be paid for by the Trump campaign. You are no longer qualifying for the debate. So Larry Elder sued Fox News. I don't know where that's going, but basically, he should qualify for this debate. Then the other person is someone that I don't think that you've heard of, because I don't think I mentioned him before, or you even know about on Twitter. His name is Perry Johnson. He is a very odd-looking old man. He looks like a former talk show host. You know, rest in peace, Bob Barker. Like a game show host.
I was about to say.
Not time.
Right.
He developed the manufacturing standard called, it's like ISO 10 or something, and so it's like everything has to be built to these manufacturing standards. So he is also a
heard of that.
very wealthy person. And he has a Newsmax show called Behind the Scenes with Perry Johnson, where he has a reality show about running for president. And he's trying to campaign in Iowa so that he can place. I want to show you a picture of this man because it's fascinating.
This is going to come back on a point that I want to make later. So, can we table that for a second?
Yes, we can, but I just want to show you a picture of him. This is his reality show.
Oh, okay, I've seen this.
You've seen Perry Johnson, yes. But anyway,
I just don't know his name.
But his last thing, Perry Johnson blasts RNC for a corrupt and rigged debate process. I thought I read progress. He took 5th place in the Iowa straw poll, but he was kicked out of the debate. By the way, I think that we could have placed 5th in the Iowa straw poll because we ate a pork chop at the fair. You know, it's not a very...
we host this podcast.
We host this podcast. There's at least 3 people in Iowa who probably listen to this, and we'd be fine.
Maybe. Yes, so the 2 buffoons on the end, and then working inward was Nikki Haley and Chris Christie.
Both people who I think could have been presidential candidates a decade ago. Nikki Haley, as governor of South Carolina, held a great deal of promise. She's a young woman. She's of an Indian background. She ran a state. She's a governor of South Carolina, so you have someone who ran a state and ran an early primary state, too.
Yeah.
Then you have Chris Christie, ran a state, New Jersey, not a small state, was good at it until he wasn't. And then, but both of which 10 years ago, not just were relevant, were being talked about as vice presidential or presidential candidates. 10 years have passed, and all they have done is try to work for Trump and fail. That's the entire past decade of their lives, as far as the public is concerned. Christie tried to get the attorney general job, and Trump passed on him because Christie prosecuted Jared Kushner's father and sent him to jail. So Trump's like, oh, okay, fuck you. Nikki Haley got the job as the UN ambassador from Trump,
right.
And then, you know, dropped off after a little while and then said, I'm going to run for president. So 2 flops.
And then, yeah, because it wasn't an even number, it was an odd number.
Right.
So then Mike Pence was next.
Oh, God. Another former Trump hire that failed.
Who, by the way, the fact that oh, I'm sorry, I forgot Tim Scott. Excuse me. So it was...
How dare you forget the black man?
So it was...
Chris Christie and Tim Scott? Or is it Nikki Haley and Tim Scott?
It was Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, excuse me. And then... No, but that can't be right. Now I'm forgetting. Let's move outward.
Now let me look because so, I can look up the picture of the Republican debate.
The 2 in the middle were obvious, right? So the 2 in the middle.
Well, no, let's look up a picture. We'll go through them in sequence. Okay. So you're right. So it was Christie and Tim Scott. So Tim Scott was opposite Chris Christie. Tim Scott, black. So
he was
senator,
lower than Chris Christie.
Yes.
In poll.
Even with Chris Christie, lower than Nikki Haley, I think. 1, 2, 1, 2. And then it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There was an even number. That's
right.
why we're off.
Yes.
Okay. So on the ends you had Ada Hutchinson and Doug Burgum.
Yes.
Then one layer in you had Chris Christie, who's just running as a nakedly anti-Trump candidate.
Right.
From like a funny perspective.
Actually, that's another thing I want to bring up later. But yes, so Chris Christie and
then Tim Scott, who is running as I'm Christian and black.
Right.
And from South Carolina. Then you had Mike Pence and Nikki Haley.
Okay.
So they put both former Trump employees, basically, from his administration.
But that wasn't by accident. They said, we've put you in the order of poll numbers.
Right. And then in the middle...
The 2 in the middle...
You have Rhonda DeSantis, as Donald Trump Jr. calls him, and... Vivek is supposed to rhyme with fake. Ramaswamy.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so Siddhartha Gautama. Big deal. That's your debate stage. Yeah. Those are your Republican candidates when you don't have Trump, by the way. I want to make this very clear. This is who you end up with.
Right. But You and I are in
absence of Trump.
very, very different places when it comes to this because I actually watched the debate, I think.
What do you think? Did you hallucinate it?
No, I'm saying I watched the debate, and so therefore I think you and I are probably in very different places. Because I got a different taste of some of these people, and that's what I wanted to sort
You
of
had a taste of beta?
lead
Okay.
into this. The two buffoons in the end, forgettable. Like I said,
What are you
they were
talking
asked
about? Bergamentum.
they asked like two questions to them, and it was, oh.
Chris Christie.
Chris Christie and Mike Pence were both. They came with their, A game and their political faces.
They have to.
on.
They have a choice.
Right, but they came prepared as they knew to come as they knew
Well,
as they knew to come prepared.
But you
that
have
doesn't sound
people-
right, but you understand what I'm saying.
And they're both people who have been in politics for
Right.
over 20 years.
Right.
I hope so.
But here's the problem, because when we get to the actual debate, and when we get to the one person who, in my opinion, won that debate, Vivek.
Okay, so you think that too.
Absolutely. He took a page out of Trump's book. And
He just started hitting them all.
He actually said on the debate stage, I'm the only person up here who is not bought and paid for by somebody. I earn my own money. These are all politicians. They all have their canned, he didn't say BS. They all have their canned BS slogans that they have to, trot out on the debate stage, and you're not going to get that from me. I'm going to tell you the truth, and blah blah blah.
Wow.
He was impressive.
I'm hearing this
And
from many people.
At several
and
points,
that's impressive to me.
At several points, Chris Christie got so angry. So I don't know if you saw the clip going around on Twitter where Chris Christie's saying, "I have had enough. I have had enough of this young kid talking down to us." Like, it was a shit show.
Wow.
Part of it.
Well, you also have the two most tame people at Fox News, Brett Baier and Martha McCallum.
Right.
Where if you drop something on the floor, they'll both jump. Trying to moderate this debate. And
they did a poor job. Because
they're not moderators.
Mike Pence was the one person who kept trying to interrupt and say,
well, let me tell you what happened.
No, he kept trying to push his word and his agenda. And several times Brett Baier was like, Mr. Pence, no, stop. But they let Vivek go. And I was like, okay. So when it comes down to it, there's two schools of thought. And I think it's a generational thing. So Fox News, that's different. But the older generation would say that DeSantis won. Because he put out his canned statements, he put out his slogans, he said the things he needed to say, but he had no
affect.
No affect.
No emotion. This is me, this is why I'm
no
here.
ability to deliver.
Right.
It was all rehearsed, and it was clearly all rehearsed.
That's embarrassing.
And to someone who is of an older generation, that's what they know of politics. It's rehearsed stuff that you deliver on a stage, that you deliver from a teleprompter, and we go, yes, thank you.
Right.
Versus a young guy who clearly was speaking off the cuff. In my opinion, it seemed like he was speaking off the cuff. He didn't have much, canned statements.
Right.
And he was playing up to the crowd. He was playing up to the, I'm going to tell you the truth, and these other people aren't. So one very good instance of this, Mike Pence was talking about how America and the people of America are so wonderful, and we're doing great, we're doing wonderfully. Even though at the other side of his mouth is saying, but we're kind of doing badly because of
That's a
Biden,
stupid,
But-
that's a stupid needle to thread. Because
it's
that's like 2006 George W. Bush statement.
Right, it's the idea that I need to be optimistic and I need to lie to the American people to tell them everything's fine.
God.
And as soon as he said that, Vivek went, Mike, we're in a dark time in this country. You need to be honest with the American people.
Wow.
No one is doing well in this country, and we need to spell out why and how we can fix it. You telling us that we're all doing great, but we need to, change this and that and the other is not helping anything.
Whoa. So basically ended him.
Kind of. And it was just refreshing to see someone who understands how politics works right now in this country.
Right.
Which leads me to my biggest point for this. I was sitting there after watching it, I was sitting there thinking about it, just like, what's changed? What's different? 25 years ago, Bush, Clinton,
Yeah.
they just saw them as American people just saw them as politicians, right?
Which is why Ross Perot was so popular. That was what made 1992 different, is you had a man who's a businessman step in and say, this is how much we're spending. This is how much is coming out of your household. This is why we lose wars. This is why we waste money. This is a problem, and no one's talking about it. And they were like, he's a lunatic. But many people, by the way, you can find a lot of liberals today who will vote straight Democrat, have voted straight Democrat for 10, 20 years, say, I voted for Ross Perot in 1992 because he told it like it is.
Right. So
there's a space in American politics for that.
The tide was shifting, but it hadn't shifted yet.
Right, because he couldn't get over 20%.
I think the issue was, and it could have been COVID that made this, but the point is, at that time in the early 2000s, late 90s, no one paid attention to politics.
Right.
The general American people, they didn't care.
You have your job, you have your life. Politics, I think at that point even, it wasn't a hobby for the average person, but it also didn't necessarily affect your daily life, which is why you see period pieces from that period of time. Even the jokes that they made in like 92 about, what was his name, who was Bush's vice president, the idiot.
Cheney.
No, but George H.W.
H.W., sorry.
Yeah, I can picture him too, with the tomato thing. Let me see.
Of course, you would ask me a question that...
I know. G.H.W. Bush, VP. It was Dan Quayle.
Yes.
So, they'd make a Quayle joke on late night television, but it was like, oh, what a rube. And they'd move it along. That was it. That was the extent of people's politics.
You'd get a few canned laughs of people who were like, I don't understand the joke, but I'll laugh.
Oh, he doesn't know spell tomato, but he's our vice president. That was it.
So you had that generation who still valued the statesman, the gentleman, we want our president to look and sound a certain way.
We want a Kennedy. We want someone in a suit. We want a Nixon. We want someone to speak on our behalf.
And that generation is still alive but dying out. That's what the boomer generation is. That's why I think my dad, having watched the debate, said, oh yeah, DeSantis impressed me. Because he gave them what they're used to.
But there's also an undercurrent in that same generation that sees someone like a Vivek like, that's the future and we need to get on that train.
Right. But those are few and far between, I think. Because my dad, as someone who loves Trump and will definitely vote for him in any capacity, still has something programmed in him clearly that this is what we're looking for. This is what we honor. This is what we prioritize.
It's in a sense embracing Trump as an imperfect soul, but then viewing him as an aberration to the shape of which politics is supposed to take. Like this was a moment, and now we have to go back to. We have to have a more perfect...
Go back to normal.
Exactly. You and I know that there isn't a normal. Much like in 68.
So the shift that's happened, and I think it's partially Trump and it's partially social media, politics has become entertainment.
Yes.
Everyone knows and cares about politics now, even the people who normally would have said, oh, I don't follow that stuff.
Yes.
Everyone does because it's semi-forced down their throat every time they open Twitter, every time they open Facebook, whatever medium you use.
Right.
It's all there. And we had a president who didn't lie to us, who told us, for the most part...
But in essence, it's almost like the dream of the boomers to have somebody like a Trump in charge, where It's no bullshit. You're someone who comes out and says, look, they've been saying shit about UFOs. I don't know if it's real or not, but that's what they've been saying.
But that's the problem.
They're hiding JFK documents. I don't know what to do about it. I'm trying my best.
That's the problem, though. That generation, for too long, bought the medicine.
Yes.
They were given the lies. They were given the stuff from the government, like, don't worry, everything's fine, when in the background everything's burning down. And they believed it. They were like, we don't have any choice but to believe it. But with social media the way it is, and everything and everyone is on 24/7, there's cameras everywhere, we're all looking at everything, we know the truth. We seek the truth. So if a politician lies to us, we're like, that's not what I saw.
Yeah, exactly.
This mostly peaceful protest, right? That was the prime example of, you're saying this as something's burning behind you.
You also can't hide medical conditions anymore. Like, Biden would have been a great president in 32. Because he could have ambled along. I mean, for God's sake, Wilson had a stroke. He was half alive for a year. You had FDR, who was in a wheelchair and nobody knew it. Like, you could have had someone like Biden then. Now, everyone is aware that this man has serious cognitive impairment.
So, the through line here is, I think Vivek is the person who understands the new normal. I hate that phrase, but the new normal of politics and how it should be run in this country. And he's speaking to a generation of millennials and maybe even Gen Xers, and then maybe Gen Zers. Like,
because he's Gen X, right? He's Gen X.
Right.
Him and DeSantis are both Gen X.
Right, but DeSantis is still playing to the old ways. And he's still trying to go far right, excuse me. He's trying to be the uber conservative.
So DeSantis is running a Ted Cruz style campaign where you have zero personality, but you're right on the issues and you hope that people agree with that. But that's not the case.
And that's what's odd to me. In those canned moments that they showed us of DeSantis, like in press conferences, he seemed like, oh my God, like he tells it like it is. Like
flashes of lucidity.
Like, he's a great speaker. He takes down people who need to be taken down. But the moments of unscripted, it's not scripted, but you know what I mean.
But the moments where there's not some kind of like little buck slip telling him where he's supposed to be and
what you're supposed to say.
And what he's supposed to say. He's
similar
very
to Biden.
He's very wooden. To the point where it's almost hilarious. No, very prickly. That's the other thing about him. It's okay to be awkward in American politics. American politics thrives off of awkward people.
Not really, though.
But, okay. You have other people who were semi-awkward and did okay. Like, it was okay, they were awkward, it could be funny, you could make a joke out of it. But if you're awkward and also seem like you're kind of a dick, that's 0 for 2. You can't be awkward and kind of a dick. And he seems a little bit prickly to have to even interact with people. Like, he doesn't want to talk to people, he doesn't want to have conversations. He's out in the fucking field of dreams when Trump's mugshot is getting taken and, like, doing some stupid photo shoot with his family. Like, that's a day when you just go away and you're quiet. You don't go sit there in the fucking field of dreams. If you're in the field of dreams, get lost. Like, you don't invite a camera crew out on a day like that. You look like a dick, and it's bad. So,
okay, so we hit 2 of my 3 points. I want to make one more, and which actually leads into my next topic.
Yes.
So DeSantis was terrible. I think he lost, even though some older generations might think he won.
What's interesting is I was listening to O.J. Simpson. And he said that he thought that Nikki Haley was right on foreign policy, but he said Vivek will be president someday, if not now. That was his takeaway. He had a very good 2-minute takeaway about the whole debate and each character and everything like this. And
he impressed me. He was the only one. Sorry, this is worth bringing up. And it actually leads into my last point of the debate. They made it a very specific segment to talk about Trump. And to talk about the indictments, and to talk about, would you support Trump if he were to get the nomination?
Right, which they have to sign a pledge saying that if the person gets the nomination. Yeah.
Right, so they were asked point blank at the debate. Vivek, hand up immediately. The other ones, they faltered, and then as soon as they saw his hand up, especially Chris Christie was like...
And apparently DeSantis looked over before raising his hand.
And... Yeah, he did that. But Chris Christie was the one who had the most weird and hesitant reaction. And to give him credit, Brett Baer called him out. He was like, what happened there? What's wrong? And he had to bumble and fumble an answer out.
He's putting M&Ms into a large bag of M&Ms.
Which was ridiculous. But it led to another line of questioning of who on this stage believes that Mike Pence did his duty on January 6th.
Did Mike Pence raise his hand? He's like, no.
Well, and so they were going down the line asking each of their opinions, and when they tried to shift the conversation to something else, Mike Pence said, no, not everyone has answered this question, and pushed the point, which I thought was weird.
I would lean up to him and say, look, I think that you had a time for choosing, and you chose wrong. And I think that you could have, I think that within the bounds of the Constitution, you could have said there are too many questions about the votes, and therefore we will table this discussion for later in the afternoon. And you could have done that, and nobody would have attacked you or been upset at you, and then later on in the afternoon you could have certified that everything you wanted to do that day. I don't think that it was smart to go in there and do it the way that you did it, and I don't think you're heroic for doing that.
And I want to set the record straight. I want to make something very, very clear, because we talked about this before.
Yes.
He said on that debate stage over and over and over again, I said in my oath that I would defend the Constitution, and that's what I did on January 6th. Wrong. Wrong. The Constitution says nothing about the role of the vice president in elections.
No.
That was the Electoral Count Act, which was written in the 1800s, 50 plus years after the Constitution was written.
And has had to be revised since.
Yes.
Because it was very unclear.
Yes. So for him to say that I chose my actions because of my oath, wrong.
Right.
And for all of them on the stage to go along with that, I had a problem with. You need to know your shit enough to call him and say, well, actually, and I don't care if the American public don't know the specifics. If you're on that debate stage, you say, actually, that power is not delegated to you in the Constitution. It's delegated to you from another statute. So by your oath, if you had gone along with the plan, you would not have been violating the Constitution. You would have been violating the Electoral Count Act, which is a different law, period.
I would have leaned over to him and said, do you know who Samuel Tilden is? Said, I don't know. Well, okay, what about the election of 1876? You know anything about that? Because you should know about that before you step into that role. The most disputed election in U.S. history. We didn't have a president well into the next year because they couldn't understand where the votes were coming from, and when we had a disputed election, and we dealt with it in a constitutional way. I mean, people weren't happy with the result, but we worked with the Constitution to do that. We didn't have an inauguration on the date because it went so far.
Right.
So we can say that there is precedent for dispute in a situation like this, and there is precedent for taking a second look and making sure that we're right. And as recently as 2000, we had an election where half of the country believed it was stolen because of how people went about it. And knowing all of that, and also with a completely new way of voting, we want to be extra sure with how we do this. I think that Mike Pence could get a lot of credit if he stepped in and said, look, I made a last-minute decision that I thought was within my bounds of the job and within the bounds of the Constitution. Other people had a different view, and I understand where they're coming from. And in retrospect, I could have potentially decided differently that day. And I understand why people were upset. I would vote for Mike Pence if he said that. Instead, he's running off of this thing of like, I was right, I defended the Constitution, and I thought this was the way I was supposed to vote, and I'm the only one who did it, and everything like this, and you know, the past 4 years have been difficult. And instead, as most people know, in Congress who worked with him, he's not very smart. Like he's dumb in the way of like an insect or a dog. Like he's not very intelligent. And so that's the way that he processes things. Someone came in and said, this is your duty, and so he just did it. That's not the person you want leading the country. I was angry at Trump for picking him as vice president. I still am. I still think it's the worst hire that he ever made.
You know why he did it, though.
Of course, but in retrospect, did it make as much of a difference as they thought? Probably no.
Which, quite frankly, he's wasting his time and money thinking that he can get the nomination.
No, he's not.
Being so...
Maybe wasting his time, but he's making money.
Well,
I think that I think that he thinks that in doing this, he will rehabilitate his image from ever being associated with Trump. He'll probably get invited onto some defense contractor board, and everyone will be happy. That's, I think, the goal for him and for Nikki Haley. I don't know what Chris Christie's goal is. That's weird. He's kind of this little agent of chaos. He's making a lot of money, but I don't know what he expects. He's not going to get hired even.
So to tie the debate,
To tie one on.
To tie the debate conversation to a close and move on to the next subject, I did find it funny that in the lightning round at the very end of the debate, they were all asked, a series of just sort of random questions on policy and stuff.
Abortion.
And Christie got the question about UFOs and
Yes.
aliens, and he protested. He's on that stage going, "Really? You give that question to me?" And I'm just like, you deserve it, asshole.
I would have had so much fun with that question.
I don't even think he actually answered
Do
it.
you, Diane? Do you? Thank you.
But, so second topic, as we've gone way too long on this.
Do you want to go to the Trump interview?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no. Oh, sorry. I wasn't going to bring that up.
Oh.
I was going to go into the 14th Amendment stuff.
Let's do that next one. Let's do the Trump interview
Okay.
now. Okay. There was another thing that happened this entire debate.
I know. Because I didn't think it was that important.
It was basically a corollary to this entire event.
Okay.
It was simulcast. Trump was on NBC, there on CBS.
But I watched it.
It was
just
the
like,
Icecapades. Okay, a couple things. One, apparently they wood paneled an entire room at Bedminster just for this production. Somebody said that. I guess there's no wood paneled rooms there, but they wood paneled it specially for this production, which I think is hilarious and gay.
Where did you hear that?
On Twitter.
No, that's false, because Trump went to Tucker.
I thought that they filmed it at Bedminster, New Jersey.
I was under the impression, because they had a clip elsewhere on Twitter, it wasn't part of the interview
Where they're walking outside?
Where they were walking outside, and Trump said, "I like what you've kind of done with the place," meaning like you made this nice studio.
Oh, so Trump went up to Maine? Oh.
I thought that's what...
I don't know.
Listener, go look it up for yourself.
Listener, go find where Trump filmed this shit.
You're not going to get the straight answer from us.
He filmed it in Chatsworth. Trump filmed it at his rented house in Chatsworth. But I think it's funny that, one, they simulcasted. They're saying it got like 200 million views. That's not true.
Right.
It's impressions in the same way that like you open the app and it's just in the app.
No, it's not impressions. It probably got more impressions, but that 200 million means someone opened, like maybe accidentally opened the video, and they count that as a view.
What do we think that the actual view number is? I mean, it's more than debates, obviously, but I don't know.
Because I think technically, like, if you watched it twice, that would count as 2 views.
So, okay.
So that's not quite a fair metric.
So, but, okay, let's take their 200 million at face value. Let's even take 10% of that. It's a 20 share. 20 million views.
Yeah.
Okay. So that outdoes every major network that night, every major cable broadcast, every major cable news broadcast. Okay.
I don't know the numbers at the...
20 shares big. 40 million, you're pushing like Dallas finale. But, okay, that's a lot. All right. So, 20 share, basically, for the Trump and Tucker discussion. I don't know if anything came out of this discussion that was considered particularly substantive.
No.
I know that Trump had a funny little ditty about Kamala, where he said, "What's she talking about? The bus goes here, the bus goes there." But basically, he's on his best. They also asked him, there was an extended and protracted and, I think, interesting discussion about the Panama Canal. Where he was in
that part.
Oh, so right in the middle, I didn't watch the end, but I know that there was something where he was like, Panama Canal, we gave it, under Jimmy Carter, we gave it there for $1 to China, and then China took it, and then now China owns the Panama Canal. Can you believe it? They made 4 times as much money on Panama. So he's very much into the numbers about the Panama Canal. Now, from a geopolitical perspective, he is entirely right to be focusing on it a lot, because the Panama Canal is, where the East Coast gets their shit from. Right. So that's an important point of discussion. He did sound, I have to give him credit, Trump sounded more geopolitically foreign policy focused than domestic policy in this little discussion he had with Tucker. They also got on the Jeffrey Epstein thing.
That was weird.
Which was weird. Trump basically said his same answer he said about UFOs, where I don't know if it's true, but apparently you believe it, so it might be, I don't know. And he was like, But he did say something where someone said on Twitter, like, he's like, he had this beautiful life, beautiful houses, and you knew that he was so close to saying beautiful women, but he knew he shouldn't. So he stopped himself really quick and then just sort of demurred from like, why would you do something like that? I mean, maybe you had those things and you don't have them anymore.
This is what irritates me, though. That's where I feel like he's biting his tongue in a way, right?
Right.
Where he's trying to play the politician and say, the right, quote, the right thing, and not what he actually believes. You know that he actually believes that Epstein did not kill himself. He might not,
possibly.
He can't legally maybe say, I think Hillary did it, but
he
could legally say, I don't think that Epstein killed himself.
Can he, though? Because it's his Justice Department that did the investigation and that it was under his watch. What happens if Epstein's estate sues the Trump Justice Department or whoever's left him saying, like, your duty fell and you were supposed to watch this prisoner and they're not supposed to be allowed to do this, what if that happens? So there might be legal liability, so he said no. That's the only thing I could see.
I still feel
You're probably right.
He could have taken some liberties with that question, and he bit his tongue the whole way. Like,
I think
you could see it bleeding.
You could see he was not happy with having to answer that question.
Yeah,
but I love the way
Tucker pushed it.
But I love the way he threw it back at Tucker, and he was like, "Well, obviously you believe it. Apparently, a lot of people do. It's a very many people believe this, and they're thinking about it very strongly.
Yeah, that was smart.
That was, but it was kind of the same thing about UFOs, where on both of those discussions, it's very conspiracy oriented, but you almost wonder. Did someone at some point in the past 6 years hand him a file and say, you cannot say anything? There's a little bit of that essence from there where you're like, or does he want you to think that? Like with the discussion of the Iranian bomb thing that's now part of the classified documents lawsuit that's happening with his arrest and all that. Right. Where, did someone actually hand him something, or is he bluffing? I don't know, but it's a fun discussion. And nothing else remarkable from that interview. It was kind of cute to watch him and Tucker talk back and forth, and I hope they do it more. I think that would be good. But in essence,
I wanted something more. I wanted something more revelatory about what he said. I wanted him to come out, Trump style, semi. But I don't want to say attacking, but semi saying. Those clowns on the debate stage, they don't know what they're talking about.
Well, we know that he doesn't do one-on-one like that. His one-on-one is trying to win over the other person on the other side of the table. That's every time he does a one-on-one discussion. Now, if it's him and three other people and three moderators, something like that, that's when the guns come out.
Maybe. I don't know. I listen.
I know. It's just kind of like, it was there.
This isn't getting me wet.
What? What? The debate didn't get you wet either. Well. On that note.
Do I have time to bring up the last thing?
The 14th Amendment?
Yes.
I was going to do that in the next episode.
But the next episode's going to be cultural.
No, it's not. We're going to do 2 more.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes. On that note.
He's going to kill me.
What?
And he can go fuck himself.
Oh!